going on, guys? Nate Dog here, and today we're going over my Stamblade for the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor patch, The Rogue. But before we get into it, if you guys would take a moment of your time and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so that way you guys can stay up to date with this build or any of my other content that I drop on YouTube. You can also go over onto Twitch and become a follower of me. So, without further ado, let's dive into this build. Starting off in our character sheet here, my character has a max magicka sitting at 11,000, max health at 18,000, max stam at 27,400, with a magicka recovery at 600, health recovery at 360, stam recovery at 1,600, spell damage is sitting at 2,200 with spell critical at 17.6%, weapon damage at 3,300, with a weapon critical at 61.3% on the back bar. On the bow bar, spell damage is at 1,800 with spell critical at 23.6%, with weapon damage dropping down to 2,800 with weapon critical dropping down to 52.3%. Spell resistance is sitting at 14,800. Physical resistance is at 11,200 with critical resistance at 1,300. Like I said in my last build video, I got critical resistance due to the Greymoor patch. This is why. Now we're going to go run over to our dummy over here, and I am going to buff up my guy with weapon damage on my back bar. As you can see, my weapon damage then goes up to 3,900 with a weapon critical of 67.3% on my dual wield bar. We're going to buff it up again and go to my bow bar. And then on the bow bar, weapon damage goes up to 3,300 with weapon critical at 58.3%. Now, popping a potion. When I pop my potion, health recovery goes up to 430 with stam recovery at 1,800 when I pop my potions. So, attributes. I have 64 points into stam because this is a stam DPS build, so I want all my points into stam to give me the most amount of potential in my stam. I know some of you guys are saying you haven't hit 30k into that stam. Yes, I do know that, but I want to get my health sitting at a good portion. At 18,000, I thought that was a good spot for a stam DPS to have health sitting at for survivability. You can't DPS if you don't survive the dungeon. So, moving on into active boons, I have the shadow boon, which increases my critical damage done by 18%. Since we have very good critical chance on this character, we will want the shadow stone. That way when we hit crit, we have a better chance of increasing our critical damage done by 18%. Now going over into the skills, starting on our bow bar, my front bar, first ability that we have is in the bow skill line. It is the last ability to unlock, or the fifth ability to unlock. Starts off as Poison Arrow. We morph it to Poison Injection. This will deal 3,700 poison damage, and then an additional 7,600 poison damage over 10 seconds. We use this pretty much to deal 100% more damage to enemies under 50% health. So this is our beginning step of our execute phase. So when you see that enemy at 50%, you want to apply this. Then again, you kind of want to apply this kind of as you go, but this is when we'll really want to make sure that we apply this, because we're going to end up doing more damage with this poison injection if the enemy is below 50% health. Moving on to the next ability we have is also in the bow line. It is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as a volley. We morph it to Endless Hail. This deals 1,200 physical damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second for 12 seconds. I know it says duration is 14 seconds, but after a 2-second delay of basically winding up your shot for 12 seconds, the Endless Hail will tick. So this is kind of our damage over time that we'll want to use on trash mobs or even bosses that we'll want to use this. Moving on to the next ability that we have is in the Shadow skill line. It is the fifth ability to unlock. Starts off as Summon Shade. We then morph it to Dark Shade. This is a shade version of ourselves that attack enemies and fight at our side for 20 seconds. This thing deals 2,400 magic damage and occasional whirlwind all enemies around it. dealing also 2,400 magic damage. The Shade attacks inflicts minor main, reducing enemy's damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. Now Nate, why do you want this? The reason we want to inflict that minor main is because it gives the enemy a negative effect, and also now those trash mobs or any monsters that this Shade attacks now will end up doing less damage. That way we can survive easier with this. So moving on into the next ability, it is in our assassin skill line. It is the 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Grim Focus, we then morph it to Relentless Focus. This lasts for a full minute. We reduce the damage taken by 2% for every light and heavy attack up to 5 times, so basically up to 10% reduce the damage taken. So now, upon that minor main, now it's about a 25% damage reduction when we stack this up 5 attacks. But the reason we also want this is because with the 5 light or heavy attacks, we can convert it into Assassin's Scourge, which is basically a sceptrical arrow to fire for half the cost of the ability. That deals 14,000 disease damage, and it's also a little bit of a heal if we need an emergency heal type thing. This can heal us 33% of the damage dealt if we are within 7 meters. So you'll want to stay close when you end up using this to get that heal if you are needing it. So kind of our little emergency heal if you got a little fast 5 stack up. Anyways, moving on into our next ability we have in the Siphoning skill line. It is the 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Siphoning Strikes, we then morph it to Reaching Strikes. This causes our light and heavy attacks to heal us for 1,400 health and restore 106 dam. For fully charged, heavy attacks restore twice the value of those. So this is our way to get health back as we attack, also to get stam back when we light weave our abilities in there so we can keep up our resources. We also restore an additional 4,200 stam when the effect ends. So basically you'll want to cast this for 20 seconds, and basically at the 1 second marker before it ticks out, or you can just let it tick out, pop it back real quick. This lasts as long as our Shade, so basically you know when this thing runs out that our Shade needs to be poked back up. So this keeps us having stam and health. So very important skill to make sure you have. Now for our ultimate on this bar, we are in the Assassin skill line. It is Death Stroke, then we morph it into Incapacitating Strikes. This is only a cost of 73 ultimate. This deals 12,100 disease damage and causes enemies to take 20% more damage from our attacks for the next 6 seconds. We can wait for this ultimate to go up to 120, and then we can stun enemies for 3 seconds. This is also a silence ability. When we get it to up 120, a silence ability is when you cause a magic caster to not be able to cast their magic abilities. That is what silence does. Silence now, so if you're going against anybody that's magic type, you wait for 120, use this ultimate, they're not going to be able to cast any magic abilities for the next 3 seconds. Also, the reason we went with this morph is now while slotted, you gain Revenge, which restores 100 magic and stam when you deal damage with light or heavy attacks on an enemy that has a negative effect on them. So, just on our bull bar, we have Poison Injection, that applies poison damage, that's a negative effect. We have Shade, that gives minor main, so reduces damage done, that is a negative effect. Disease damage, so they can get the disease status effect, that is also a negative effect on them there. So we got 1, 2, 3 abilities already in our bar that can affect them negatively that are all different. This one's disease, this one is minor main, and this one is poison. So this is why we go with Incapacitating Strikes. So on top of now getting resources back with Leeching Strikes, we will now also get resources back just by attacking them because we have Incapacitating Strikes slotted. So now moving over into our back bar. First ability that we have is in the Assassination skill line. This starts off as Assassin's Blade. It is the first ability. We then morph it to Killer's Blade. This deals 4,000 disease damage. It deals up to 300% more damage to enemies below 25% health. So this is our now second execute on this build. As you can see, I like to put my executes on the same side, so that way I know those are my execute buttons. That way they do not move, let's say, from one end to the other. That's why I put them basically in the same spot. So, we'll want to make sure to use this when enemies are below 25% health. Do not use it beforehand, otherwise you're only going to hit them for only a small amount of disease damage. This also can heal you if the enemy dies within 2 seconds of being struck, so we have a heal here with also heals with Relentless Focus, and when it's an emergency to get heals here, and with Leeching Strike. So we got a lot of healing potential to give us health back during the fight. This is why I was okay with only 18,000 health. Next ability that we have is down into the Fighter's Guild skill line. It is the third ability to unlock. Starts off as Expert Hunter. We then morph it to Camouflage Hunter. Yes, this is just kind of, this thing just exposes enemies, and Nathan, everybody's probably wondering, Nathan, why are you using this? This is basically a PvP set when you got shaded enemies around you that you need to find them. I get that, but the big thing why we use this is the thing at the bottom. While slotted, we gained Major Savagery, increasing our weapon critical rating by 2,100. Also, we gain Minor Berserk for 5 seconds after we deal critical damage from an enemy's flank, increasing our damage down by 8%. Yes, I have a good enough critical rating the way it is, but we're going to add that little critical rating. The major thing I want is I want to get that Minor Berserk after dealing critical damage from enemies flanking. So what that means is, flanking is when we're looking at our target here, what we want to do is you got the enemy shoulder from here all the way around to here. If we critical hit, we're going to do 8% more damage. Because that is what is considered a flank. We're going to increase our damage done by 8% for 5 seconds when we're flanking. So this build is definitely going to be more focused on, you see it at target, you're going to hit them and basically try to get to the backside of the enemy as quickly as you can. Doesn't matter if it's trash mob, doesn't matter if it's boss. Yes, I know some trials out there like Sunspire, you're not going to be able to flank around like the dragons because they're kind of stock there. That's okay. This build still does work very well in those type of trials because you're getting buffed up from the rest of your group, so you end up hitting still very, very hard in those trials. So, moving on to the next ability we have is in the dual wield skill line. It is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Twin Slash, we then morph it to Blood Craze. We slice enemies with both weapons, dealing 2,000 physical damage with each weapon and causing the enemy to bleed for an additional 3,000 or 8,300 physical damage over 10 seconds. We also heal for 6,800 health over the duration. So over the 10-second duration, we're going to get 6,800 health. So, more healing that we're getting from this, from Blood Craze. Killer's Blade, if we kill him with an assassin with this ability. We're getting health from Leeching Strikes for light attacking. We're getting health from Relentless Focus if we use our bow ability on someone within 7 meters of us. So very important, we're getting a lot of health. That's why I've said before, my health is only at 18,000. We're still getting a ton of health. So, Blood Craze gives you health back. Use it, apply to get health as you go. So, next ability we have is in the Siphoning skill line. It is the fifth ability to unlock. Starts off as Drain Power. We then morph it to Power Extraction. We siphon the enemy's blood, dealing 6,200 disease damage to all nearby enemies. So this can also apply the disease effect on people. Not the main reason why we use it. If we hit an enemy, we reduce their weapon and spell damage by 200 for 8 seconds. So this is not a minor main, so this adds on top of our minor main. So we now really reduce the damage done by the enemies by 200 plus the 15% already. Now the reason we use it now, we gain Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. So, you'll want to go up to your trash mobs, apply this ability after you use your Endless Hail to get yourself the most amount of weapon damage that you can. That's why we are not using, when we get to potions, that's why you'll notice my potions do not have Major Brutality or Major Savagery. It's because I get Savagery here, and I get Brutality here. So those Essence of Power that you get for Stam side will not do us any good in this build because we already have it, and we're already applying it to the enemy. So that's just a waste of potions, so don't buy your money on that. We'll get to the potions later and what potions I use. So, moving on to the last one that we have is in the Shadow skill line, and it is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Veiled Strike. We then morph it into our Surprise Attack. This is the one that we're going to be doing a lot of our main damage with. This is slashing, dealing 8,200 physical damage. And here it is. If you are flanking the enemy, you shred through a small portion of their armor, reducing their physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds. This is why I say flanking is important. We get more damage done, or we reduce their physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds by flanking. So we're cutting through their armor. As a damage dealer, the more armor that you cut through an enemy, every enemy has 18,200 physical and spell resistance. The more resistance you cut through, the stronger your DPS is going to be. So by us reducing the physical resistance, we are physical build. We're not magic based, we're stand based, so stand based is more physical. So by reducing their physical resistance, we're going to end up hitting harder. Along with our Camouflage Hunter here, by flanking, we're going to increase our damage done by 8% for 5 seconds. So this is why I'm saying in this build, it's going to be important to make sure that you stand on enemy shoulder here and stand anywhere back in here to here. Do not stand in the front here, you're not going to do damage. So from here to here, you're not going to get the flanking thing. Flanking is from the shoulders and back behind the skull. That is where you're going to do the most amount of damage. So remember, stand behind the enemy. Surprise attack also, when you're attacking with it from the flank, you stun the enemies for 3 seconds and set them off balance. So now you also set them off balance just for free flanking them. So that's why I'm saying flanking is going to be very important on this build. The more you're flanking, the better your DPS is going to be and the stronger your hits are going to hit for. Again, the same ultimate I have is in the incapacitating strikes, because this is such a low cost ultimate and such a good ultimate to get your resources back, because now on this line we have blood craze, so we're now making them bleed, so that's also a negative there. We have now surprise attack when we set them off balance, that is also a negative. So now out of our abilities we've got 1, 2 here, 3, 4, and 5. We have 5 abilities out of 10 abilities that we could slot that now can apply negative effects. This is why it's important to make sure you flank, and these are why I use this ultimate. So let's go over the passives that I use for this build, starting in the top with the class Assassination. First passive we have is Master Assassin. This increases our weapon and spell damage by 10% while we are sneaking or invisible, and increase the duration of stun from sneak by 100%. So if we end up going in a dungeon and we do end up sneaking on an enemy, we end up doing 10% more damage to them. Very good thing to have. Executioner is our next one. When an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by one of our assassination abilities, we restore 1,800 magic or stam, whichever one's higher, so this one will be stam. Pressure points is the next one. We increase our weapon and spell critical rating by 400 for each assassin ability slotted. We have 876 on our bow bar because our abilities is Relentless Focus and also Incapacitating Strike. On our back bar, we still have Incapacitating Strike and now Killer's Blade. That's why I have 2 abilities here. That way when I switch from bow to dual wield, there is no change in our critical rating. Last passive we have here is Hemorrhage. This is with Assassin ability slotted. We have 2 of them. Increase our critical damage down by 10%. Now we have on top of it our Mud to Stone, the Shadow, so increasing our critical damage done by 28%. When we get critical damage, grant us minor savagery, increasing our weapon critical rating by 1,300. So we're now getting more crit rating because on our dual wield bar, because this one, Camouflage Hunter, is major savagery. Now just by having Assassin ability slotted and dealing critical damage, we get minor savagery, and we do on both bars. We have it, so we can now always have a good chance of always proccing this ability, this passive here, I should say. Next passive we have skills is in the Shadow. It's Refreshing Shadow, increasing our health, stamina, and magic recovery by 15%. Very good thing to have. Is always good to have recovery going. Next passives we have is Shadow Barrier. Casting a Shadow grants us major resolve for 6 seconds, so we increase our physical and spell resistance by 5,200. This duration is increased by 25% for each piece of heavy armor. We only got 1, so the current duration is for 7.5 seconds, so about 7 seconds is what we get whenever we cast a Shadow ability. Dark Vigor is our next one. Increase our max health by 3% for each Shadow ability slotted. On our dual wield we have 1, and our Shadow ability is Surprise Attack. And then on our bow bar we also have 1 because it is Dark Shade, so that way we never have a jump between our health going from front bar to back bar. This is why I set it up the way I did. No, Dark Veil is our last passive here, increasing the duration of our non-invisible base Shadow abilities by 2 seconds, so that's why our Dark Shade is going to last longer than if people who do not have it leveled up. Also along with our Surprise Attack. It's going to last a little longer. Okay, going into Siphoning now. First passive we have is Catalyst. After drinking a potion we gain 20 ultimate, so there you go. Pop a potion every time and bam, you got automatically 20 ultimate. Very handy thing to have. Highly recommend to have it. Magic of Flood is the next one, increasing our max magicka by 8% while a Siphon ability is slotted. Siphon ability that we have on our bow bar is Leeching Strike, and then on our back bar it is Power Extraction. So we always have max health, max magicka is always at 8% on both front and back bar because we do have a couple magic abilities in there, so we want this max magicka up there. Soul Siphoner, increasing our healing done by 3%. So this is just mostly going to be applied to us, so we're just going to increase it since we got it on both bars. That way, any ability that heals us, we're going to... By any ability that gives us health, we're going to increase the healing down by 3% since we have a Siphon ability slotted on both bars. Also why I have 1 on each bar. Transfer is our last one here. Casting a Siphon ability generates 2 ultimate. This effect can only occur once every 4 seconds, so basically every 4 seconds we'll want to cast one. But I know for the durations on the ones that we're using, this one lasts for 20 seconds, and Leeching Strikes last for 20 seconds. So basically every 20 seconds you're going to want to cast one to get your 22 ultimate. Do not spam these to get your ultimate. These 2 abilities just to get 2 ultimate. Wait for the durations to go out on these, then cast it again to get your 2 ultimate. Do not cast it every 4 seconds. They're durations, not spammable. Going into weapons, starting with the dual wield. First passive we have is Slaughter, increasing damage with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies who are under 25%. So we're going to end up doing a little bit more damage to enemies with our Blood Craze when they're below 25%. We got an Execute after that, so... Next passive we have is Dual Wield Expert, increase weapon damage by 6% for the offhand weapon. Nice thing to have, so our offhand can do a little bit more damage compared to our front hand. Control Fury reduces the cost of stamina abilities. A very good thing to have. We do want lower cost on those. Ruffian gives us 15% damage bonus when attacking stun, immobilized or disoriented or silenced enemies. So, like I said, you got the Surprise Attack on. You use this, you're gonna set an enemy off balance, and this thing applies to stun, immobilize, disoriented, or silence enemy, you technically stun them is what it is when you do that. So this you'll end up doing more damage, so that's why flanking is more important. You end up doing more damage the more you flank. So make sure you flank. Next passive we have is Twin Blade and Blunt. Since we are using 2 daggers, all we'll do is increase our weapon critical rating by 2,100. Since this ain't a major savagery, this can stack on top of our major and minor savagery. Next one is the bow skill line. First passive we have is Long Shot, gives us a damage bonus up to 12% against enemies at longer ranges. This is just the kind of thing, if you end up having to do this most of the time in the dungeon, you're not going to be at long range, but it's still a very good thing to have just in case for those situations when you do. Accuracy. This increases our weapon critical rating by 1,000. Nice thing to have more critical chance. That way we want to hit above 50. This will help us hit above 50%. Range. Reduce the cost of stam for the bow abilities. Very good thing to have. Reduce cost. You can have more stam then. Hawkeye, dealing damage with a light or heavy attack, increases the damage of our bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds, stack up to 5 times. So by shooting our bow 5 times with light attacks, we can stack up our abilities to 25% more damage with bow abilities. Hasty Retreat grants us Major Expedition for 4 seconds after using a roll dodge. Major Expedition increasing our movement speed by 30%. So on our bow bar, basically this means is when we roll dodge, we can move really, really fast to get away. So this is where we're going to be using this just to kind of, if we need to get to someplace hurry or get out of the way very quickly. That is in the Hasty Retreat skill. Going over into now light armor. Light armor, we're only going to take the top 3 because the bottom 2 require 5 pieces or more of light, and we only have 1 piece of light. So this is going to reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to us by 4% and reduce the cost of sprint by 3%. Advocate. This is going to increase our magic recovery by 4% and reduce the cost of our magic abilities by 2%. Spell Ward. This is increasing our spell resistance by 363. Because we will want some resistances because we have very low resistances the way it is. So we are a very squishy DPS. In the medium armor, we have Dexterity increasing our weapon critical rating by 1,600. So this is where all my crits are adding up now to give us above that 50% point. Because 50% is, you got to look at it, is every time you cast an ability or you do attack, you have a half chance to crit that thing. So the higher your crit chances, the more likely you're going to end up doing crit damage. Do not try to push up to 100. You will not make it, and you'll only get up to 99 crit chance. It does not pay to get really above the 70 range mark. It does not. Because then you're losing points into where you can put like weapon damage, which will actually help you do those higher hitting numbers. So try to shoot for 50 in between 70. That's your sweet spot. Windwalker. Increase our stam recovery by 4%. Actually, this would be 20%. Reduce the stam cost of our abilities by 10%. So pieces of this. Improve Sneak. This is just a flavor thing because I kind of use him as a stealthy thief type thing and more of the playstyle. So if you guys want to, you can, but you don't have to have this Improve Sneak. But it just reduces the cost of sneaking by 35%. There is a dungeon called March of the Sacrifice where this actually will help out if you want to use it, but for me, I use it there, and it's just more of a flavor thing for me that I like to use the sneak. Also, it reduces the size you can detect while sneaking by 25% since we are wearing 5 pieces. Agility, this increases our weapon damage by 15% since we are wearing 5 pieces or more. And athletics, this is the only skill in the whole medium armor skill line that where you need 5 pieces or more. So remember, get your things up to 50, that way you can still get this even if you're wearing 5 pieces of light or 5 pieces of heavy and only 1 piece of medium armor. You can still get this. This does not require 5 pieces, but I still get this anyways since I got 5 pieces of medium armor. This increases my movement speed bonus of sprint by 3%, so this is 15% for us, and reduce the cost of roll dodge by 20%. Over into heavy armor, we are wearing one piece, so this increases our physical and spell resistance by 362. Constitution gives us increasing our health recovery by 4%, and we restore 108 magicka and stam whenever we take damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. This can only apply once every 4 seconds, so this is a way that we'll get a little bit of stam back also. I don't care what people say out there, everybody does take damage in a dungeon. Juggernaut increases our max health by 2% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. We do not get retelevised just because we do not have 5 pieces or more of heavy armor, and same with rapid mending. Other passives you want is in soul magic, just a little flavor thing. If you want to, you can use soul summon, which allows you to revive once every hour without spending a soul gem. Fighters Guild, I get intimidating pressure because this intimidates NPCs for questing, and also this helps you reduce the cost of our stam abilities in the fighter guilds, which we will not be casting it. Like I said, this is just a slotted thing, but just in case if you accidentally do cast it, that way it's not so expensive. I have done that a couple times, and not gonna lie. We generate 9 ultimate when we kill an undead dater or a werewolf. We will want to put 3 points into Slayer here, because this will increase our weapon damage by 3% for each fighter guild ability slotted, since this dual is our main weapon bar. So I will have to show you what our new weapon damage is sitting at with that on. And Skill Tractor, we deal additional 20% damage to undead dater and werewolf. There are a ton in these dungeons for PVE, so this is something you'll want to get, so you are just going to do a tremendous amount of damage to these undead dater and werewolf if you are flanking them. Make sure to flank. Now, in the Undaunted skill line, the passive we'll want is Undaunted Command, because when we activate an ally synergy, we restore 4% of our max health, stam, and magicka, so we get 740 health, 1097 stam, and 443 magicka back. Use synergies. Synergies are not only for the tanks, you can use them as well. Make sure you use synergies to keep up your resources as well. Undaunted Metal, this will increase our max health, stam, and magicka by 2% for each type, since we are at least wearing 1 piece of heavy, 1 piece of medium, and 1 piece of light. We get our 6% there. That is why my stats are sitting where they're at, is because I'm wearing at least 1 piece of each, and from the Undaunted Metal passive we get 2% for it. Or we get 6% for it, as I should say. We are a Wood Elf on this build. Other races that you could use a Khajiit, you could use a Redguard. Redguard's a really good one. You could use an Orc. Orc gives you a little bit more weapon damage. Granted, some of these will maybe have trouble with the sustaining part, because a Wood Elf gets a flat out in their passives, get more stam recovery compared to the other races out there. But those are other races I said are good choices. You might just have to change things up a little bit compared to this build. So, Wood Elf gets Hunter's Eye, increasing our stealth detection radius by 3 meters. Nothing really too big about this. Increase our movement speed by 10%, and our physical and spell penetration by 1,500 for 6 seconds after using a roll dodge. So this is why when we use our bow, we get Expedition, so we move 30% faster. And now we increase our movement speed by 10% when we use a roll dodge, so that's why it looks like I am Speedy Gonzalez when I roll dodge with a bow on a Wood Elf. We have Yerfe's Endurance, which increases our stam recovery by 258. That's why my recovery is sitting pretty close to 1,600, and then with the portion at 1,800 is because of Yerfe's Endurance. Next passive we have is Resistant Affliction. This increases our max stam by 2,000 and poison resistance by 2,300, so we just get the immune to poison status effect. Very nice little flavor thing to have. There is poisons in a lot of dungeons. Over into crafting passive. You will want to get into medicinal use. I cannot stress this strongly enough. This build is not really possible if you do not get medicinal use. This is when we use a potion results last 30% longer. At base, your potions only last the things that they give you, which could be, if it's health, gives you increase in your health recovery by 20% for only 36 seconds at base. If you get this, the potion will last, that recovery will last for 47 seconds. The potion cooldown is 45, so you have a 100% uptick time if you have medicinal use. Get medicinal use. Next passive I have is in provisioning. I end up going Concierge because I am running a drink buff. This adds 20 minutes to the duration of any consumed drink, so that way my drinks last longer than what they save for. So that way I don't have to go through so many, so that way I don't have to use resources to craft them or use gold to craft them. So if you were using a food, then I would say go to Gourmet. This will add 20 minutes to the duration if once you have it 3 out of 3. So using a food, use Gourmet. If you're using a drink, use Concierge. So now going over into things I am wearing, starting with things I am running the Dubious Cameron Throne. You do not have to run this. This is what I just prefer. This is what I feel like running. This increases my stam recovery by 315, gives me max stam of 2,800 and max health of 3,000 for 2 hours and 20 minutes since I do have Concierge. This is a food I am running. So for potions, I'm using Essence of Health. So this restores 8,600 health immediately. This gives me Major Fortitude, which increases health recovery by 20% for 47 seconds. This also restores Stam, 7,500, and gives me Major Endurance, which increases my Stam recovery by 20% for 47 seconds. As you can see, cooldown is 45 seconds, so 100% uptick of Major Endurance and Major Fortitude. This is why medicinal use is very important to have. Get medicinal use is right here. Now going over into the gear I am wearing and starting off with my weapon on the bow bar. I'm using Gladiator's Bow. This is to absorb Stam enchantment on it. This deals 2,400 physical damage and restores 354 Stam. Since this is mostly going to be on my back bar, this is if this procs, because when we have Endless Hail going, it can proc, so if this procs, we get actually Stam back. We also increase our weapon and spell critical by 6% if I do not have Precise on this. My actual crit chance is actually below the 50% mark starting off if I do not crit anything. Granted, like I said in my passives, if I crit, then this does go above the percent marker, but I just wanted to make sure I was already above the 50% marker, so I went with Precise here as the trait. This is part of the Kavachi Gladiator set. For 2 pieces of this, we get 790 weapon critical. 3 pieces of it, we get another 794 weapon critical, and for 4 pieces of it, it adds 123 weapon damage, and for 5 pieces of the Kavachi Gladiator, we gain 1,400 weapon damage against targets who are at or below 25% health. So, when execute phase comes, you are going to hit tremendously harder with this set here. Because of the Gladiator, we're doing 1,400 more weapon damage with it. Now, going over into the dual wield, our first one we have is the Gladiator Dagger. This reduces our target's physical and spell resistance by 811 for 5 seconds. We have the Crushing Enchantment, like I said earlier. The more you reduce a target's physical and spell resistance, the harder you are going to hit with a DPS. So hopefully your tank is running Pierce Armor to reduce the target's physical and spell resistance by already 5,000. This can proc on top of our other thing that also reduces physical and spell resistance. We have that surprise attack that reduces target's physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds if we are flanking them, so that will now add on top of this. This is why we're running Crusher Enchantment on our main hand. We went with the Nirnhone Trade to increase the damage done with this weapon by 14%. This is part of the Kavachi Gladiator set. Already went over that, so we'll not be going over what's in it again. On our other dagger, we did the weapon damage enchantment, so when this procs, this is now going to increase our weapon damage and spell damage by 174 for 5 seconds. We went with the Sharpen to increase our physical and spell penetration. Physical and spell penetration is basically like reducing the enemy's physical and spell resistance. This is what's going to allow us to actually cut through some of that armor as well. Now, on top of the weapon damage, we're also going to proc with other things that can have like major brutality and things like that. So this is why we want weapon damage, so we're going to hit harder. So this weapon damage, when it procs, can actually add on top of the 1,400 weapon damage against targets below 25% health. Now over into apparel, I am wearing a 5-1-1 ratio. I'm wearing 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light. All the traits on my apparel are all divines, just to increase my Mundus Stone effect, since our Mundus Stone is the shadow that is increasing our critical damage by 18%. That is why it sits higher. If you put other traits on it, you will not get 18% critical damage done. So, starting off with our monster helmet here, we have Bulgar's Mask. We want max stam enchantment since we are stam base. We want enough stam to cast abilities. So, Bulgar's set is we add 124 weapon damage and 124 spell damage. Now for the 2 pieces of this, when we use an ultimate ability, we gain a weapon and spell damage equal to the amount of ultimate consumed. So, right there what it means is if we use 500 ultimate, we just got 500 weapon and spell damage from consuming it there. Now, and our physical and spell penetration is equal to 23 times the amount for 12 seconds. So all this is applied for 12 seconds. So the bigger the ultimate number you have, the more you're gonna hit. Or you could leave it at what I have for the incapacitating strikes at 73 and just cast a bunch of those, so that way you always kind of have this constant uptick of an ultimate and always have a constant uptick of weapon and spell damage. The choice is yours there though. So moving over into the chest, this is the other set we are wearing. We are wearing the New Moon Acolyte set. I want max health enchantment because needed something to get me at that 18k marker for health. So here it is with health enchantment, divine traits on it. The New Moon Acolyte set, for 2 pieces of it, we get weapon critical, 804. Also 804 spell critical. For 3 pieces, we get 124 weapon and spell damage. And for 4 pieces, we get 1,435 physical and spell penetration. 5 pieces, we add 464 weapon and spell damage. So now this is where I'm getting all this damage is now adding up on my character sheet. And like I said earlier, with the spell and physical penetration, this is kind of like cutting through that physical and spell resistance a little bit. It's going to allow us to cut through that armor that every enemy has of 18,200. So this is a very good set to use, but just keep a note that when you use this set, you are also going to increase the cost of our active abilities by 5%. So you may have to use heavy attacks in there to keep your stam up. If you keep your rotations right, you could actually not have to use a heavy attack, but just want everybody to be warned that this set does increase your active abilities cost by 5%, both stam and magic. Going into the shoulders, this is part of the Bulgar's ellipse. This is where my light piece is. Chest is a heavy, because the chest we want heavy is because this is the biggest piece. Armor, so we are going to get more armor rating by having heavy on the chest. Shoulders, we have light here. This is part of the Bulgar's lip, or Bulgar's set, so I will not be going over it. Went over it earlier. We have new Mukalite at the waist with stam enchantment. Shoulders, we left it as a magic enchantment just to give us a little bit of a buffer there. For the hands, we did stam enchantment, divine traits, New Moon Acolyte set, medium armor. Legs, medium armor, New Moon Acolyte set. We want health because the legs and the chest are the big pieces. And ellipse or shoulders, waist, hands, and feet are small pieces, so you want the bigger enchantments on the legs and chest, so that's why we want max health enchantments on those, so we get the most benefit out of health there. For feet, this is medium armor. We want max stam enchantment, divine traits. Over on the accessories, yes, my accessories are only blue trait here, but we end up going with weapon damage enchantment on all 3 of them with bloodthirsty, so if we are going to increase our damage against enemies under 25% health by 8%, so this is adding all 3 of these on top of each other. So this is why I'm saying execute phase is going to be very important for you guys out there. Make sure you flank them. Make sure when it comes to execute, you're going to hit like a truck. Trust me. I wasn't thinking I was ever going to hit over 50k DPS. Now on this build, I can easily, every dungeon, I can easily hit 99 to even 102k on some bosses. Easily, without blinking. It's ridiculous how much damage you can do with this guy. when you're flanking. Now, going over into the champion skill line, starting with the tower on the green tree, we have 23 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free by 10%. Sprinter just to reduce the cost of sprinting by 1% there, since we already got very fast speeds. In the Lover, we have 49 points into Tenacity, increasing our Magicka and Stam. Of our fully charged heavy attacks, restore 11% more. We have 100 points into Mooncalf to increase our Stam recovery by 15%. Over into the Shadow, we have 29 points into Tumbling. This reduces the cost of our roll dodge by 12% when we need to get out of the area. Shadow Ward here, we have 29 points into here. This reduces the cost of blocking by 12% if we occasionally need to block for something. Like I said, March of Sacrifice, there are parts there where you have to block. Over into the blue tree, no points into the Apprentice. In the Atronach, we have 13 points into Weapon Expert. This increases our damage done with light and heavy attacks with with our bows and dual wield weapons by 8%. Master at Arms, this increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. Over into the Ritual now, we have 44 points into Thaumaturge. This increases the damage done with damage over time abilities, so our Endless Hail, this will increase it by 17% more damage. Pure Strikes, this increases our critical damage and critical heal with Stam abilities by 17%. Piercing, this increases our physical penetration by 2,900. Mighty, this increases our physical poison and disease damage done by 12%. So Mighty will add on top of our Pure Strikes there. And Thaumaturge could also stack on Mighty since it's over time, or Master at Arms will stack on Mighty. Those are things you want to make sure it will stack. Next one, we're in the red, is the Steed. We have 50 points into Ironclad. This reduces our damage taken against direct damage attacks by 18%. Spell Shield, this increases our spell resistance by 3,000. Thick Skin, we have 48 points into this. This reduces the damage taken from damage over time effects. And then we got 49 points into Hardy and Elemental Defender. So Hardy gives us reduced damage taken from physical, poison, and disease damage by 11. Elemental is damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage. So Elemental is anything Magic based. Hardy is anything physical based. Thick Skin does stack on Hardy, so anything that's damage over time that is physical, Thick Skin will stack with Hardy. And the same with Thick Skin, it will stack with Elemental Defender. If it's anything Magic based that's damage over time, Thick Skin stacks with that. Now Ironclad will now stick with, since that's direct damage, that will stack on anything that has to do with physical, poison, and disease damage. Also, it can stack on anything that is direct attack, that's Flame, Frost, Shock, or Magic damage. So those are where your stacking in these trees are coming from. And last but not least, in the Lord here, we have no points into this. So there you have it, guys, the Rogue build for the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor patch. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.